I sat at the long mahogany table, the one I'd helped them pick out 2 years ago when they moved into this house. Malcolm raised his glass to Sierra, her latest promotion, glowing across the room like a medal pinned on both of them. The chandelier above us flickered against the cut crystal wine glasses. I could smell the roast they'd ordered in from a caterer, and the faint perfume of Sierra's new dress. "You're just bitter. You never built anything real," Malcolm said, his voice carrying over the polite clink of forks. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at Sierra. She chuckled softly, like it was a joke between them. I tightened my grip on the water glass, but forced my fingers to relax. I took a sip and let the coolness steady me. They didn't know I'd been rehearsing this moment. They didn't know I'd been waiting for the right time. The right time had arrived. Without a word, I reached into my purse. The leather creaked as I drew out the black 3-inch binder. I set it in the center of the table, the sound of it landing louder than their laughter. Pages fanned out, neatly tabbed and labeled. "Interesting," I said, my voice even, "because I spent $70,000 keeping your house from falling apart." Malcolm's hand stopped halfway to his glass. Sierra's smile faltered. I slid the binder closer to them, my fingertips brushing the edge of the first tab. "Let's see who really built what." I continued, flipping to the section marked mortgage. "It's all here. Every payment, every transfer, every month." You called it temporary. The room went quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Even the chandelier seemed to stop shimmering. I could feel their eyes on me now, not dismissive, not superior, but startled. I straightened my back and turned another page, ready to begin reading the totals aloud as the silence thickened around us and the weight of my words settled into the room, carrying us into the reckoning that would follow. It started with one phone call. Malcolm's voice was low, hesitant. "Just a little help, Mom. We're between things. Sierra's job situation is shifting, and the bank's being difficult. It's just this one mortgage payment. We'll pay you back by June." That was 25 months ago. The first transfer was $1,200. I remember it clearly because I'd just canceled my own furnace maintenance for the winter and made a note to wear thicker socks in the evenings. The second came 3 weeks later, then the third. The explanation changed slightly each time, but the tone stayed the same: urgent, rushed, apologetic, just until we stabilize. When tuition notices started coming in, I offered without being asked. Sierra was finishing her MBA. Malcolm said they were stretched thin, but on the cusp of something big. I believed them. Of course I did. That's what parents do. Then came the Mazda. The old car broke down. They needed something reliable, professional. I co-signed the loan, and still every conversation ended with, "This is temporary. We'll handle it soon. You've always been the dependable one." Meanwhile, I brewed coffee at home instead of meeting Diane at the cafe. I wore the same 3 sweaters on rotation and mended the seams when they began to fray. I cut my own hair in the mirror one weekend. I didn't want to tell them. I didn't want to make them feel guilty. Their pantry grew fuller. Mine grew simpler. Their walls filled with framed photos from Napa and Aspen. Mine still bore the nails where my late husband's paintings once hung. They said they were building a life, but I was the one laying the bricks with every quiet transfer. And now, 2 years later, as Sierra flipped through the binder with stiff fingers and Malcolm avoided my gaze, I realized they never thought of it as a debt, only as something I'd always do. I turned to the next tab, education, and laid it flat on the table. It wasn't supposed to be a discovery. I was simply organizing my tax files, same as every March. I'd cleared the dining table, pulled out my labeled folders, and started sifting through the usual pension statements, property tax confirmations, pharmacy copays. Then I found the first one, a tuition payment labeled under Sierra's name, not mine. $4,800. I frowned, flipped it over, then opened the next file. Another student loan payment. then another. Each one deducted from my account. $1,900. All for her. None of it reimbursed. I sat down hard in the chair. The numbers didn't lie. These weren't gifts. I hadn't even been asked for most of them, just nudged, gently manipulated. The next envelope held credit card statements. $9.200. Designer heels, steakhouse dinners, hotel stays. Their life looked lovely on paper, paid for by mine. There were grocery deliveries too. Recurring Instacart charges sent straight to their address, not mine. Utility bills with Malcolm's name but my routing number. Insurance premiums. Property tax installments. I hadn't kept these records out of resentment. I'd kept them because I'm careful. Because I believed one day we'd all look back and laugh at how tight things used to be. Now I looked at those receipts and felt nothing close to laughter. I hadn't taken a vacation in 6 years. My own dental crown had been delayed 3 times. And just last month, I passed on replacing my cracked glasses because the copay felt too steep. They never asked if I could afford it. They assumed I could. Worse, they assumed I should. I tucked the statements into a manila folder labeling it Family Support in thin black ink. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need repayment. But I needed them to know. The next morning, I brought the binder to Diane's house. We hadn't worked together in over a year, but she still invited me for coffee every other week. I'd never taken her up on it until now. She poured our mugs and pulled her glasses down from her head. I opened the binder between us. The pages looked different in her dining room, less familiar, more damning. She scanned the tabs, her brow slowly furrowing. This all came from you. I nodded. Her finger moved down the spreadsheet I'd added to the front, the one that listed everything by category: tuition, mortgage, utilities, credit cards, food. When she reached the bottom, her lips parted slightly. Delphine, she said barely above a whisper, this isn't helping your family. This is financial abuse. I flinched. The word stung. I waited for my mouth to argue, to say something about culture or loyalty, or how families just figure things out. But nothing came, because she wasn't wrong. I stared at my coffee steam rising past the rim. They said it was temporary, I murmured, that I was just helping them get through a rough patch. Diane leaned back. But the rough patch has wallpaper now. Designer shoes, catered dinners, a new Mazda. I let out a bitter laugh. And I have soup cans stacked in the pantry because I've been skipping fresh groceries. We sat in silence for a while. Then Diane gently turned another page. You've been covering their lives while they diminished yours. Her voice wasn't angry. It was steady, like she was reading a diagnosis aloud. They call me a failure, I said quietly. And I still paid their bills. That's not failure, she replied. That's generosity weaponized against you. The binder lay open between us like a wound. I closed it softly, my fingertips lingering on the edge. And for the first time, I began to wonder what would happen if I stopped paying for their survival. I was just looking for a recipe. That's what I told myself when I opened Sierra's page. I wanted the lemon chicken she made last Easter, though I'd never gotten a bite of it. The photo hit me before I could scroll. She and Malcolm were in Vegas, smiling beneath the neon glow of the iconic signed champagne flutes raised mid-toast. The caption read, a much-needed getaway spa skyline suite and sushi for days. The timestamp, same weekend, I paid their overdue property taxes. I remember it clearly because I'd canceled my dental appointment that Friday. The molar had cracked a month earlier, but I'd made it work with clove oil and saltwater rinses. I told myself it wasn't that bad. They were clinking glasses while I was biting down on cotton balls. I kept scrolling. There was a video Sierra twirling in a new kitchen with quartz countertops and matte gold fixtures. Early birthday upgrade, she squealed to the camera. That same month, I'd patched a leak under my sink with duct tape and a rag. Each swipe of my finger cut a little deeper. They'd built a life of glow and ease, one transaction at a time from my account. And I wasn't just excluded. I was financing my own invisibility. The pictures blurred, my hands trembled. I shut the laptop, not out of anger, out of grief. Because I hadn't just given them money. I'd given them comfort. I'd given them cover. I'd allowed them to live untouched while I pretended everything was fine. And now I couldn't even chew on my left side without wincing. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked at myself in the mirror. There were shadows under my eyes I didn't remember forming. I pressed a hand to my jaw and whispered, "Never again." Then I opened the cabinet drawer and pulled out every receipt I had left. I spread everything across my kitchen table one Saturday morning. The receipts, the bank statements, the canceled checks, all of it. I started stacking them by category the way Diane had shown me. Mortgage first, 24 payments at $1, $200 each, $28, $800. Then loans. Every semester's tuition installment, every transfer marked family support. $19,400. Next came the car. The Mazda they said was essential for Sierra's job. 3 years of payments, most of them routed through me. $3,600. And then the credit cards, $9, $200 in restaurants, hotels, suits, spa days. I wrote each number in neat columns on a yellow legal pad, underlining totals twice. At the bottom of the page, I added a line no one had asked me to record. Cost of peace. Next to it, I listed the things I'd given up, without complaint: vacations, dental work, a new water heater, even the shoes I'd been saving for. That number didn't have a total. It sat blank, a ledger of everything invisible. One by one, I slipped the papers into sheet protectors. Mortgage behind the red tab loans, behind the blue car, behind the green credit cards, behind the orange. My hands moved steadily, like I was building something instead of tearing something down. I wasn't rehearsing a confrontation. I wasn't writing a speech. I was documenting, making sure for once that the story would belong to me. When the last page slid into place, the binder felt heavy in my hands, heavier than any purse I'd ever carried. It wasn't just paper. It was 2 years of my life arranged in black ink. I closed it gently, pressing the cover flat. Tomorrow night, I would take it to dinner, the same dinner table where Malcolm had called me bitter, and I would open it in front of them. They were still laughing when I clicked the binder open. Malcolm had just made a joke about how some people wouldn't understand the stress of success. Sierra grinned with her fork halfway to her mouth. His wife chuckled, swirling wine in a glass I gave them last Christmas. I didn't say a word. I flipped to the first tab, read, and slid it forward. 24 mortgage payments, I said. $1,200 each. That's $28,800. The sound of the fork hitting Sierra's plate was sharp. I turned the page. Blue tab. Sierra's student loans. $19,400. Malcolm opened his mouth but closed it again. Car payments for the Mazda. $3,600. Next tab. Orange. Credit cards, restaurants, shopping flights. $9,200. Sierra leaned forward. Wait, what? I didn't look at her. I kept my hand steady as I turned the next page. Your utilities, groceries, spa weekends, all delivered to your door, all deducted from my account. I thought you offered, she said softly, eyes wide. I turned to Malcolm. And you stood in my house, told me you were trying to get ahead, told me you just needed help until the promotion came. And then you sat here tonight and called me a failure. He blinked. Mom, I didn't mean I'm not done. I flipped to the summary page, the one I highlighted in yellow. Total $70,000. Paid. Quietly. While I skipped the dentist, the vacation, even a new coat last winter, because I didn't want to burden you with my needs. Sierra pushed back from the table. Malcolm looked like he'd swallowed a rock. I finally looked them both in the eyes. You didn't build anything, I said, calm and clear. You inherited a safety net woven with my silence. Then I folded my hands and said nothing. Let them sit with it. Let the silence say what years of kindness hadn't. Next time you call someone a failure, make sure they're not the one keeping your lights on. The doorbell rang just as I was folding the binder closed. I stood, slowly walked to the door, and opened it without a word. Martin's here, I said. My late husband's brother stepped inside, nodding once. He wore a dark windbreaker, arms crossed like he'd been holding back too much for too long. His eyes scanned the room, the frozen faces, the paper trail, the untouched wine. He cleared his throat. I heard there was a family meeting, he said flatly. Malcolm shifted in his chair. It's private. Martin didn't blink. Good. I'm family. He walked over to the table, his hand resting gently on the back of my chair. Delphine never needed a crowd, he said, his voice steady. She needed support. And instead you drained her dry and called it gratitude. Sierra's eyes flicked between us. Uncle Martin. He held up a hand. You used to call her your second mother, Sierra. You used to sit at her kitchen table after school while she helped you with math. She made your Halloween costumes. She drove across state lines when your father couldn't show up. Malcolm's jaw clenched. We didn't mean to. Oh, you meant it, Martin said, voice low. You meant to let her carry your weight so you could float higher. You meant to enjoy every benefit without asking where it came from. You meant to pretend it was love when it was convenience. Silence. Sierra looked down. Malcolm's face was flushed. Martin turned to me, his voice softening. You didn't fail, Dell. You held this family together longer than anyone had the right to expect. And if they can't see that now, it's because they've gotten too used to looking down at the one holding the ladder. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Martin had said it for me. And this time, they had no smart comebacks. No explanations. Just the slow, unmistakable realization that the story they'd been telling themselves had cracked wide open. The next morning, Malcolm called. His voice sounded careful, like he was walking barefoot across broken glass. Mom. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You know how dinner can get. Emotions run high. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence speak. He kept going. Sierra and I talked. We realized things got complicated. We should have communicated better. I waited until he ran out of euphemisms. Then I said, It's over, Malcolm. What do you mean? I mean no more mortgage payments, no more quiet help, no more pretending. He was quiet. I could almost hear his thoughts rearranging themselves in the pause. But Mom, I'm not angry, I said, but I'm finished. That afternoon, Sierra texted. A string of messages in quick succession. We didn't know the total was that much. You were always so generous, I thought you didn't mind. Can we talk this through sometime? I didn't reply. I didn't owe them a debrief. Instead, I opened my linen closet and pulled out the overnight bag I hadn't used in years. I folded a few sweaters, stacked my favorite books, boxed the chipped coffee mugs I'd never stopped loving. I smiled more as the rooms grew lighter. The house echoed differently without their needs clinging to the corners. I placed the binder on the shelf in my living room eye level, not because I needed proof anymore, but because I needed to remember what silence costs, what it hides, and how good it feels to finally stop paying for a seat at a table that never saw you. As I zipped the final bag, I glanced around my kitchen one last time. The late sunlight warmed the cabinets. No voices, no tension, just peace. And in that stillness, I knew exactly where I wanted to go next. 6 months have passed. The kitchen is quiet, except for the soft clink of my spoon against the ceramic mug. Morning light spills across the table, touching everything in gold. I sit where I always have, but this time it's different. No unpaid bills buried under guilt. No emergency calls in the middle of my coffee. No tension humming behind every polite of course. My pension is mine again. My mornings are mine again. The binder still sits on the shelf. I no longer look at it often, but I haven't moved it. I open my laptop. New message. Subject line. From Sierra. I hesitate, then click. Hi, Mom. I took over the mortgage. It's harder than I thought. I'm learning things you already knew. I don't know how to undo the past, but I'd like to start with something small. If you're open, I'd like to visit. Sierra. I read it again. Slowly, this time. There's no ask. No manipulation. Just a beginning, tentative and fragile. I hit reply. Sierra? I'm not ready for Malcolm, and definitely not for you. But Seattle in the spring does sound nice. Let's talk soon. Mom, I press send. Then I close the laptop and look around the room. My room. The table is clean. The counter's uncluttered. My coffee still warm. Outside, the wind stirs the branches gently. No sudden knocks at the door. No footsteps with expectations attached. Just peace. I sip slowly. Steady hands. Steady breath. Let them figure out their own foundations. This one. This quiet, sunlit corner I built on my own.